You're with Outsiders with special co-host James Morrow, and I'm Rowan Dean. And at this time, every Monday, we love to talk to the Senator from Queensland. Queensland, you are so lucky to have her, and so are we to have with us tonight on Outsiders again, Amanda Stoker. Amanda, how are you?
I'm really well. How are you both?
Yeah, really good, thanks, Amanda. Now, I've been talking about Labor taking us back to the 70s economically, but they seem to be hurtling forward to some weird dystopian future for us on the subject of culture if they get their way. They've got this whole agenda to do with identity politics, weird stuff about transgenders choosing their own prisons, all sorts of gender madness. And this all came out, a terrific article by Miranda Devine, where she went through the Labor Party platform, the 224-page document, and all the references to sex and intersex and LGBTI. What did you make of it all, Amanda?
Yeah, it's really scary. This is the document that's supposed to sort of map out the big vision that Labor's got for Australia if it wins government. You know, the DNA that's supposed to infuse everything that it would do if it had the opportunity to lead. And what it sets out is not what, you know, someone who instinctively might think of themselves as a traditional Labor voter would believe in. Instead, it's riddled with this inner city, left, you know, rainbow warrior agenda that I think most people who regard themselves as a traditional Labor voter would find pretty out there. By way of example, if you go through their platform and look at the kinds of things that are getting a lot of attention and the things that are getting a little attention, if you think about, say, the dignity of work, something that might have been really core to a traditional Labor voter's interests, and so linked to things like, you know, employment, rates of pay. You get one reference to the dignity of work, one reference to that. You know, intergenerational equity is almost missing entirely. Poverty, which, you know, has been something that you expect Labor to talk about a lot, takes a real backseat. But if you want to talk about sexual orientation, you can have 64 separate references in the platform to that. Or if you are really into gender, 138 times we talk about that in the Labor platform. I mean, these people are obsessed, and it is really quite disturbing for people who really just want to go about their business sort of in the ordinary kind of way. I mean, this would seriously impact upon the ability of parents to raise their kids according to traditional values, if that's something they want to do. I mean, is it that crazy that we just let parents choose how they want to raise their kids? You know, keep gender ideology out of education, let people work that out when they're an adult. Keep all the radical sexual stuff away from our kids. Let them have a nice, normal childhood.
Well, they don't seem interested in...
This stuff should not be controversial.
Exactly, James.
Well, I mean, I was just sort of, you know, looking at it. I think one of the interesting things here, and this, I think you've kind of nailed it here, Amanda, because there's this long-standing fight between the inner-city Labor and the traditional working-class Labor, and this shows clearly, I think, which side has won. And I suppose part of that's because, you know, they've been trying to fight the Greens off on their left here. But what about these Jogjakarta principles that you see here that Miranda talks about? I mean, I was looking at this.
Yeah, so we'll just spell this out for our viewers. The Jogjakarta principles, they were originally part of the international human rights law.
And the interesting thing is that, the interesting thing here is that I think what's happened is that they have gone and endorsed them a while ago, and now the principles have changed, and they've basically said, well, we can't change that. We're committed to whatever changes with this thing. And so now, you talked about schools, but there's a lot of other areas in life that I think, you know, I think female sports would seem to be absolutely in the frame. The criminal justice system would absolutely be in the frame. So I think when people think about it just as sort of being about, well, you know, school choice and preschool and, you know, that kind of thing, it actually goes into many more areas.
Yeah,
and I think
it really does.
Yeah.
So take us through particularly some of those. You're a lawyer, Amanda. Tell us some of the legal ramifications.
Well, it would mean if you adopted this Jogjakarta plus 10 approach that's proposed by this platform that Labor's got on the cards, you would have a situation where a person could choose, if they were convicted of an appropriate criminal offence, they could choose the prison in which they belong according to their gender. So you can imagine all the kind of, you know, strange and predatory things that could happen in circumstances
Amanda,
where a bloke can just identify that they want to be in the women's prison. And
right.
Can you imagine all the things that might happen there?
Well, you don't, Amanda, I'll just stop you there because you don't have to imagine. You don't have to imagine. In Britain, there have been several instances now where male transgenders convicted of raping women have gone, oh, hang on, I'm a woman now. I identify as a woman. They've been convicted and sent to a prison, and they've gone, oh, no, hang on, I'm a Sheila now. I'm off to the Sheila's prison. They've gone to the Sheila's prison, where they then start raping the Sheilas in the Sheila's prison. Who'd have guessed it? Who'd have thought it? So you don't have to imagine it, Amanda. It's already happening. But carry on. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
That's all right. When it comes to sports, it would prohibit women's sports from excluding or even really testing a person's claim to be female before allowing them to compete. So you could sort of kiss goodbye to people born a woman having any real chance of winning any women's sport anymore.
This is something I've seen happen a number of times in cases in the United States. There was, I think, you know, a case in Connecticut, in the state of Connecticut, where there was a big state final for track and field, and 2 out of the 3 contestants who were on the dais for winning were females who had previously been males. And I worry that just on the sporting fields and so on, you're going to see cases of real serious, not just, you know, things where people, it's about who's winning, but injuries and so on as people are competing against people who were born male and built more physically tough and may wind up causing all sorts of mayhem on the field. Yeah.
Now, Amanda, I want to move along to another legal situation which occurred this week, which was the European Court of Human Rights. Now, what the European Court of Human Rights have basically come out and endorsed what you would call blasphemy laws. In other words, they have said that you cannot, that it is a crime to offend Muslims by criticising anything that the Prophet Muhammad did. Now, this arises out of allegations written there in the Quran that you can read if you want to do with the age, 8 or 6, or I think it was, the bride of Muhammad, and that was consummated when she was 9, and allegations were made in an Austrian court to do with pedophilia, and this led to this European Court of Human Rights saying it was illegal to criticise Islam, that free speech had to take second place to creating the potential of offending millions of Muslims. Now, what do you make of this law, Amanda, or this human rights court?
Oh, isn't this disturbing? I mean, the ruling said this, and I hope you don't mind if I read it. It was a malicious violation of the spirit of tolerance that was one of the bases of a democratic society. I mean, what about the important value of freedom of speech? If you don't have freedom of speech, then you can't have any of the contest of ideas that means a society is able to solve its problems. If we are prioritising the right of people not to feel offended, particularly this, you know, really sensitive level, over the right of people to speak freely, we are truly at the end of the road.
And
this is really disturbing stuff.
It certainly is, and it really is just an extension of 18C, which is why we should abolish 18C, Amanda. And that government that you sit in has said that they would abolish 18C. Let me ask you to remind your fellow colleagues. We would like to see that happen. But listen, I want to move on to something else quickly, Amanda, while we still have you. And this is on Trump, and Scarlett Johansson has done a little sketch on Saturday Night Live mocking the daughter of the president. So just have a look at this one, Amanda.
She's Ivanka. And a woman like her deserves a fragrance all her own. A scent made just for her. Because she's beautiful. She's powerful. She's complicit.
James?
It's pretty special, isn't it?
It's pretty special. When did Saturday Night Live stop being funny?
Good point.
I mean, yeah, I don't even know what to say to that.
Well, Amanda, your take on that. So here you have Scarlett Johansson basically you have it's the new style feminism where you attack women on the right, or women who don't, basically women who like Donald Trump. You attack them, you demean them, you belittle them in ways that were a male to do that, you would be hounded out. What are your thoughts as a female, Amanda, and as a politician? What do you make of this?
It's really bad, isn't it, that the sisterhood that's supposed to be all about promoting women is so happy to tear down a woman who doesn't agree with them. You know, if you are so unable to cope with a woman who doesn't agree with your feminist leftist agenda, you are not much of a feminist. If you are unable to cope with the idea that somebody doesn't vote the way that you do, then you aren't especially tolerant. And if you need to tear down other people on the basis of race or sex or any of these other characteristics that, you know, no one can determine, you're kind of just born with it, then you're not much into human rights. And these are all the kinds of things that the sisterhood would like to think they're champions of. It's a height of hypocrisy, and it's just so sad. But can I tell you, the left, and the sisterhood left, if I can call it that, in America, is not going to learn the lesson of the Hillary campaign if it doesn't understand that it needs to earn the votes of the many women who voted for Trump. It's not enough just to call them dumb.
Absolutely. Now,
100%.
Let me just ask you this, Amanda, just personally, and feel free to answer or not, but have the left sisterhood attacked you? You're a conservative, proudly conservative, free thinker. What's your experiences? Have you had any?
Look, I've got a pretty thick skin, so it takes a fair bit before I get, you know, worked up. But before I was even sworn in, I had Jackie Trad saying that I was anti-woman and, you know, doing all that she could to say that I was as anti-feminist as they come, simply because I didn't support abortion to birth. And you know what? I don't, and I won't, and there's nothing feminist about the right to kill children.
Amanda Stoker, you're always so great to have on, and you're an absolute breath of fresh air. Thank you so much for being on again, and hopefully we'll see you next Monday night.
Catch you then.
Right, thanks a lot. And we'll take a short break, and when we come back, James, you know, there is some lefty lunacy.
No, no.
Knock me
Say it ain't so, Rowan.
We'll be back in a tick.
When a new staff member walks into the office and sees a very desk,